How do I age well? It's something I often ponder on. My name's Rosaria Barreto, and I want to find out what it takes to live a healthy and happy life as we age. I'm a clinical exercise specialist, and for the past 5 years, I've worked with nearly 1,000 older adults, and as a result, have had the chance to talk to a diverse range of happy and healthy, and not so happy and healthy people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I want to know what it takes to be able to look back and confidently say, I lived an amazing life. Why not join me on this exploration on what it takes to live happily and healthily and learn how to age well?
So today I'm going to be talking about muscles as we age, how they change when we grow, and what we need to expect. So before we delve into the specifics of muscle aging, let's start with a brief overview of muscle anatomy. I'm going to try and not make it super boring, but I'm going to do my best. Also, quick side note, I don't know what's happened in the last 10 minutes, but my nose has just become very, very congested. So I apologise if I sound like I'm underwater. So our muscles are incredible structures that allow us to move, lift, and perform various activities. We wouldn't be able to move without them. They are composed of bundles of muscle fibres, each containing myofibrils that contract and generate force as we age. Once these vibrant and robust muscles undergo a series of changes, when we engage in resistance or strength training exercises, so that's kind of anything that's body weight related, or you're using a resistance band or a dumbbell or a machine or anything like that, whether it's lifting weights to performing body weight exercises, your muscles are subject to stress. And this stress induces tiny, tiny little damages to the microfibers or the muscle fibers. And these muscle fibers are the individual cells that make up your muscles. So in a response to this micro trauma that's going on, your body initiates an inflammatory response. And this inflammation is a natural and necessary part of the repairing process. It brings various cells, including immune cells and growth factors, to the damaged area. So we're also going to talk about something else called satellite cells, which are located on the outer surface of the muscle fibers, and they play a crucial role in muscle repair and growth. In response to the inflammatory signals, these satellite cells become activated. So activated satellite cells fuse with existing muscle fibers or form new muscle fibers, a process known as myogenesis. This fusion results in an increase in the number of myofibrils within the muscle fibers. Sounds super complicated, but basically your muscle fiber goes under stress. You then experience this repair process, and this makes them thicker and more robust, therefore bigger and stronger muscles. So the combined effect of the satellite cell activation, the fusion, and the increased protein synthesis leads to hypertrophy, kind of getting bigger, this enlargement of individual muscle cells. And this is the primary mechanism behind the visible increase in muscle size. There are two key principles that play a pivotal role in this process: mechanical tension and progressive overload. So mechanical tension is the force generated by your muscles during contractions. When you lift weights or create resistance through bodyweight exercises, you generate mechanical tension. Then progressive overload is the gradual increase in the stress placed on your muscles over time. To continue stimulating muscle growth, you need to progressively increase the resistance, whether it's by lifting heavier weight or adjusting other exercise variables. So a practical example would be able to lift 100 kilo deadlift once at a maximum. So you can't lift more than that, you just can lift 100 kilos. And then to be able to lift 110 kilos, you would have to overload over time by doing more reps or conditioning training that supports muscle overload. So the muscle growth also requires adequate nutritional support, and that's a huge, huge important part of growing muscles, getting them bigger, getting them stronger. And this is where protein comes into play. Like we're all told to take a protein shake and eat more protein, and that's got lots of protein in, you know. I don't know why I'm doing this strange deep voice. But proteins in particular are crucial, as we know, as they provide the building blocks. Remember your GCSE, for those Brits out there, science. So they're the building blocks are also essentially known as amino acids, which are necessary for protein synthesis, as well as water. Water is really, really important. It supports the overall health and well-being and impacts the muscle growth, which is a very multifaceted approach, and there's lots of elements that come into that. So proper hydration is super essential for optimal exercise performance. And when you're well hydrated, your muscles function more efficiently. So if you're dehydrated, this could lead to fatigue, muscle cramps, and a decrease in exercise performance. So there have often been times where I've gone to the gym and I just feel so rubbish. And I'm like, why can't I do anything today? And I used to be terrible at drinking water. In the last month, I've really upped my game and I feel a million times better. So maintaining this adequate fluid level ensures that your muscles can perform at their best during workouts, which contributes to the overall effectiveness of your training session. And obviously, so our bodies are pretty much majority water, and therefore it's a primary component of our blood, which transports all those lovely nutrients, including oxygen and amino acids, to the muscles. So during exercise, muscles require an increased supply of oxygen and nutrients to support energy production and recovery. An exercise generates heat, right? And the body relies on sweat and evaporation to cool down and maintain a stable internal temperature. Dehydration can massively compromise this thermoregulatory process by leading to overheating and a decline in exercise performance. Ugh, my nose is declining. So within the muscle cells, water plays a role in the cellular hydration. Maintaining proper cellular hydration is super important for various processes, including the protein synthesis that we mentioned, the building of those new proteins, and including the kind of response of muscle growth. And hydrated cells create an optimal environment for biochemical reactions involved in muscle protein synthesis. So I know it sounds super techy, but it's not. It fundamentally means we need to drink lots of water and we need to eat enough protein and to produce more protein and stay hydrated, because it's not just about kind of having headaches and stuff, but your body will not be optimal if we are dehydrated. So further to this, hydration is so important post-exercise. So for the recovery of the exercise that we've just done, it basically supports the removal of metabolic waste from the muscles that helps reduce the soreness that we experience. So staying super hydrated aids the repair and the rebuilding of muscle tissue, and that contributes to the overall muscle growth and recovery. So in essence, the process of muscle growth through exercise is a remarkable and such an exciting display of the body's adaptive and resilient nature. It responds to stress by repairing and strengthening, leading not only to increased muscle size, but also improved strength and functionality. So consistency in training, proper nutrition, and understanding these physiological processes are going to massively contribute to maximising the benefits of your exercise-induced muscle growth. So now I'm going to talk more about aging and how we're impacted by aging and how muscles change. So as we're growing, our muscles undergo significant change. So this could be things like size, strength, and composition. The process of muscle development is super dynamic and it occurs in distinct stages throughout our lives, so as we age and we change. I'm going to quickly go through those stages. So during childhood and our teenage years, there is a substantial increase in muscle mass. And this growth is primarily driven by genetic factors, hormonal changes, especially the release of growth hormones and puberty, as well as physical activity. Much more active at a younger age than we are kind of after our 30s. And that mainly comes down to lifestyle responsibilities. So sometimes in early adulthood, typically around the late teens to early 20s, people will reach their peak muscle mass. And this depending on the person. There isn't like one age. So you get these ludicrous articles that say you are at your peak in your 30s, or you're at your peak in your 20s, or you're at your peak when you're 18. A load of rubbish. Every single person is different when they reach their peak muscle mass. So this period when the body experiences optimal muscle development and strength, and during most of adulthood, muscles are in a state of maintenance and adaptation. So regular physical activity helps to sustain this muscle mass, strength and functionality, or increase these areas of change if undergoing physical activity training specifically designed for growing muscles. And then muscle decline can also happen for various reasons. So obviously, if we're sedentary or inactive and we're not doing any strength training, we're going to experience a decline. That can also be influenced by things like hormonal changes, eating poorly and not consuming enough protein, but also things like long-term health conditions and stress. And then we get to our older bodies, and this experience is also known as sarcopenia, and it does happen at different ages, but predominantly it happens after or post 60. And this term is basically a simple way of describing age-related muscle loss or muscle mass loss, strength and function. And it usually becomes much more noticeable in the later stages of life. Again, it will completely depend on the individual. So the reason that this happens is because factors such as reduced protein synthesis, hormonal changes, and a decline in physical activity will affect sarcopenia. Now, I want to point out that this can be preventable, especially if you're exercising and focusing on muscle growth training. However, there is a certain level of muscle loss that we will experience, which will just be down to genetics and hormonal changes and is supernatural. So with aging, there is a reduction in the number and size of muscle fibers. So remember what we talked about at the beginning, we're trying to build those muscle fibers up. As we age, we start to reduce that number. This contributes to the overall decline in muscle mass and function. So changes in the connective tissue surrounding the muscles can affect flexibility and joint function. And that's when we start to see a decrease in our overall mobility and movement. And this is probably where a lot of ideas around being too old to move come from. So, when people say like, oh, it's just my age. I can't do it now because it's my age. But I am totally against that statement. It is super ageist. And as I said, sarcopenia is preventable. And it's not an inevitable part of aging. There will be a little bit of muscle mass loss, but not enough if you're doing the right things, eating the right things, living the right lifestyle for it to significantly impact your later life. So we can mitigate this through regular, obviously constant exercise throughout life, which is why aerobic resistance training is so important to maintain muscle endurance, but also strength training to focus on muscle mass, strength and functionality. But just as exercise is so important, there are other things that can contribute to preventing sarcopenia. So obviously, diet, it's so important throughout life. And I think there's another kind of ageist expectation that when you get older, it doesn't matter what you eat or drink, but that can be the difference between functioning, being able to spend time with your family and friends, to not being able to because you're prevented from a mobility perspective. So an adequate protein intake is so important for muscle health, as well as avoiding smoking, obviously, and limiting alcohol intake. But when we talk about protein intake, I think we expect that we don't need as much. I don't know if that's true or not, but personally, I know that I had this preconceived idea around the fact that I need to eat more protein when I'm younger compared to when I'm older, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think we need to be eating enough depending on the stage of our life. And maybe that's a little bit less, but not significantly less. So when it comes to protein intake, it will all depend on you as an individual and how much you need to take. Just because your friend is taking 200 grams of protein a day doesn't mean you need to. You know, like a bodybuilder will be consuming so much protein, and some of us won't even need that much protein, and it could have a potential negative effect on lifestyle. So, for example, for me, I'm aiming to have 120 grams of protein a day. Now, that is depending on my weight and also my eating habits. Achieving more than 120 grams of protein a day, I find really hard. And even just achieving 120 grams of protein a day is hard. I don't always achieve it. I'm starting to track to see what foods have high levels of protein. And when you start to know what has good protein and low sugar fat, then you can start to naturally consume more protein without having to take supplements like protein shakes and protein chocolate bars and different things like that. So a really good example is a Baby Bell. Baby Bells have, I think it's like 10 grams of protein in it, like amazing. And such a lovely, lovely snack to have. So alongside this, we have sleep, which is so important to recovery, and that's going to massively affect how our muscles are developing and behaving. So make sure we're getting enough sleep. One of the key terms associated with muscle aging, which I've mentioned a few times before, is the sarcopenia. I love saying sarcopenia. And it's basically that progressive loss, okay? And it's something we need to be so aware of. And I guess something that's shocked me massively is the fact that sarcopenia could typically begin in our 30s, right? Who would have thought that sarcopenia starts in our 30s? It gets faster as we age, but this is obviously so person dependent. So there are several factors, obviously, which I've mentioned: food, exercise, behavior, but hormonal changes will massively impact when that sarcopenia starts compared to when that sarcopenia speeds up. And something that happens naturally as we age is our body becomes less efficient at synthesizing proteins. And as I told you before, that's so important for muscle maintenance and growth. So if the synthesizing isn't happening effectively, there's going to be a natural element of muscle loss. And I think it's so important to just reiterate that there are so many factors that go into maintaining muscle mass as we age, but exercise is one of those biggest things. It's something that we should be doing throughout our whole life, even in our 90s. No one is too old to exercise. No one is too young to exercise. Exercise is vital. It's something we should do, like drinking water every day. And that's going to massively impact premature aging. So just to finish off, big thing is stay active and prioritize regular exercise, especially strength training, and pay attention to your nutrition. Adequate protein intake and a well-balanced diet play a crucial role in supporting muscle health as you age. So drinking lots of water, eating enough protein, also very important. So if we focus on those three things: strength training, protein intake, and hydration, you're going to see such a difference when it comes to mobility and strength in your later life. I think it's really important that you talk to a specialist if you're concerned about this. So, for example, sometimes we have a long-term health condition that will impact our level of exercise. Maybe we need to be doing more. Maybe we need to be doing specific exercises to optimize muscle growth. And additionally, maybe we need to be drinking way more water than we think. There is such thing as too much water, but I don't think many of us are at that level yet. So keep hydrated, and let's optimize the way that we age.
My name's Rosaria Barreto, and thank you so much for listening to How to Age Well. If you've enjoyed the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback means so much and helps others to find out about how to age well.